The bullet that grazed Catherine Reed's shoulder in that dusty Nevada saloon in 1878 was meant for someone else. But it changed her life forever when the cowboy who saved her asked her name through the gun's smoke and chaos. Catherine pressed her hand against the wound, feeling the warm blood seep through her fingers as the cowboy grabbed her other arm and pulled her behind the bar. Glass shattered above their heads as another shot rang out. The bartender had already fled through the back door, and the other patrons were either diving for cover or returning fire. "Keep your head down," the cowboy said, his voice steady despite the mayhem. He had dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of creek water in summer. "This will be over soon." Catherine nodded, too shocked to speak. She had only come into the saloon looking for work as a cook or cleaning woman, desperate after traveling for 2 weeks from Sacramento with nothing but a carpet bag and $3 to her name. The advertisement had said White Pine needed workers of all kinds, and she had hoped the growing mining town would offer her a fresh start. The shooting stopped as suddenly as it had begun. 2 men lay dead on the floor. Neither of them, the cowboy crouched beside her. He slowly rose, keeping his body between her and the room, his hand on the revolver at his hip. "Someone fetch the doctor," a gruff voice called out. "We got a lady bleeding here." The cowboy turned to Catherine, his expression softening. "Let me see how bad it is." She moved her hand away, and he gently pulled back the torn fabric of her dress sleeve. The bullet had carved a shallow groove across the outside of her upper arm, painful but not life-threatening. "You are lucky," he said. "Few inches over and we would be having a different conversation." He pulled a clean handkerchief from his vest pocket and pressed it against the wound. "Hold this tight. What is your name?" "Catherine Reed," she managed to say. "I just arrived in town today." "Well, Miss Reed, that is one hell of a welcome to White Pine." He offered her a slight smile that did not quite reach his worried eyes. "I am Wade Harrison. I work at the Harrison Ranch about 5 miles west of here. Your family's ranch. My brother's ranch, technically. Our father passed 3 years back and left it to both of us, but Daniel runs the day-to-day operations." Wade helped her to her feet as an older man with a black medical bag pushed through the gathering crowd. The doctor examined her arm with practiced efficiency, cleaning and bandaging the wound while asking her questions about dizziness and nausea. Catherine answered mechanically, still trying to process what had happened. One moment she had been walking through the swinging doors, and the next the world had exploded into violence. "You will be fine," the doctor pronounced. "Change the bandage daily and keep it clean. Come see me if you notice any signs of infection." He refused payment when she reached for her small purse, waving her off. "The men who caused this trouble are paying for damages and medical care. You just take care of yourself, miss." Wade walked her outside into the harsh afternoon sunlight. Catherine blinked, disoriented by the return to normalcy. People walked along the wooden sidewalks, horses stood tied to hitching posts, and somewhere a hammer rang against metal in steady rhythm. The violence inside the saloon already felt like a dream. "Where are you staying?" Wade asked. Catherine looked down at her dusty boots. "I have not found a place yet. I only just got off the stage when I saw the advertisement for workers in the window. I thought perhaps they would need someone in the kitchen." Wade was quiet for a moment. "That saloon is not the kind of place that hires respectable women for kitchen work, Miss Reed. The women who work there do a different sort of job." Heat flooded Catherine's cheeks as understanding dawned. "I did not know. I have never been in a saloon before today." "Where were you planning to stay tonight? The boarding house, I suppose, if they have room and I can afford it." She had perhaps enough money for 2 nights if she was careful. Wade studied her face for a long moment, and Catherine wondered what he saw. A foolish woman, probably. alone and unprepared for the realities of a rough mining town. She was 22 years old and had spent her entire life in Sacramento, living with her mother until 3 weeks ago when a fever had taken the only family Catherine had left. The small house had belonged to the landlord. Her mother's meager possessions had been sold to pay debts, and Catherine had found herself alone in the world with nothing but her mother's carpet bag and a heart that felt like a stone in her chest. "Miss Reed, my brother's ranch needs help," Wade said finally. "We lost our cook 2 months ago when she married one of the hands and moved to San Francisco with him. Daniel's wife does the cooking now, but she has 2 small children and is expecting another in a few months. They could use an extra pair of hands, and the position comes with room and board plus $30 a month." Catherine's breath caught. It was more than she had hoped to find, but she felt compelled to be honest. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Harrison, but you do not know anything about me. I could be a terrible cook. I could be a thief or worse. Are you? No. Can you cook?" "Yes. My mother and I took in laundry and mending, but I also worked sometimes at a restaurant near our home. I know my way around a kitchen." Wade nodded. "Then consider yourself hired, Miss Reed. The ranch is a decent place with good people. You will be safe there, and my sister-in-law Margaret will appreciate the help more than you know." Catherine wanted to refuse out of pride, to insist she could find her own way without accepting charity from a stranger. But her arm throbbed, her head ached, and she had less than $3 to her name in a town where she knew no one and nothing. Sometimes pride was a luxury a person could not afford. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I accept your offer." Wade's wagon was tied up outside the general store, a sturdy vehicle pulled by 2 bay horses. He helped Catherine up onto the bench seat, mindful of her injured arm, then climbed up beside her and took the reins. As they rolled out of White Pine, Catherine watched the town recede behind them, wondering if she was making another terrible mistake or if perhaps her luck was finally changing. The ride to the Harrison Ranch took them through country that was both harsh and beautiful. Sagebrush dotted the rolling hills, and in the distance, mountains rose against the impossibly blue sky. The air smelled of dust and juniper, so different from the city smells Catherine had known all her life. "What brought you to Nevada?" Wade asked after they had ridden in silence for a while. Catherine kept her eyes on the horizon. "My mother died a few weeks ago. There was nothing left for me in Sacramento. I am sorry for your loss. Thank you." She paused, then added, "She was sick for a long time. Toward the end, I think death was a mercy." The words sounded cold, but they were true. Watching her mother waste away had been agony for them both. "My father died of a bad heart," Wade said. "One moment he was standing in the barn talking about breaking a new horse, and the next he was on the ground. He was gone before the doctor could even get to the ranch. That must have been terrible." "It was. But like you said, maybe there are worse ways to go." Wade glanced at her. "Do you have any other family?" "No, it was just my mother and me. I never knew my father. He died before I was born." Catherine had learned not to expect sympathy when she shared this information. More often, people made assumptions about her mother's character or her own legitimacy. But Wade just nodded. "Family is complicated," he said simply. The ranch came into view as they crested a low hill, and Catherine felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. It was not a grand place, but it looked solid and well-maintained. A 2-story house stood at the center of several outbuildings, with corrals and a large barn spreading out behind. Cattle grazed in the distance, and she could see 2 men working with horses in one of the corrals. A woman emerged from the house as Wade pulled the wagon to a stop. She was perhaps 30 years old, with brown hair pulled back in a practical bun and a kind face marked by exhaustion. Her pregnant belly was prominent under her simple cotton dress. "Wade, thank goodness you are back," she called. "Daniel was getting worried. You were supposed to be home 2 hours ago." Her eyes fell on Catherine and her expression shifted to concern. "What happened? Is she hurt?" "There was trouble at the saloon in town," Wade said, climbing down and moving to help Catherine. "Miss Reed caught a stray bullet, but the doctor said she will be fine. Margaret, this is Catherine Reed. She is going to be our new cook." Margaret's eyes widened, but she recovered quickly, moving forward to take Catherine's good arm. "Well, you poor thing. Come inside and let me get you settled. Wade, go find Daniel and tell him what happened. He will want to know." The interior of the house was clean and comfortable, with furniture that showed signs of hard use but careful maintenance. Children's toys lay scattered in one corner of the main room, and the smell of bread baking filled the air. Margaret led Catherine to a chair at the kitchen table and poured her a glass of water. "I am so sorry about the trouble in town," Margaret said. "White pine has been growing so fast with the mining boom, and not all the new arrivals are decent folks. Was anyone else hurt?" "2 men died," Catherine said. "I do not know who they were or what the fight was about. I had just walked in when the shooting started." Margaret shook her head. "What a terrible welcome. You must think we are all savages out here." "No," Catherine said quickly. "Your brother-in-law saved my life. If he had not pulled me behind the bar, I might have been killed." A strange expression crossed Margaret's face, something that might have been worry or resignation. "Wade has a talent for being in the right place at the right time. Or the wrong place, depending on how you look at it." Before Catherine could ask what she meant, the door opened and 2 men entered. The first was clearly Wade's brother, with the same dark hair and strong build, though his face was more weathered and his eyes held less warmth. The second man was older, perhaps 50, with graying hair and the bow-legged walk of someone who had spent a lifetime on horseback. "This is my husband, Daniel," Margaret said. "And that is Frank Miller, our foreman. Daniel, Frank, this is Catherine Reed. She's going to help with the cooking." Daniel studied Catherine with a skeptical expression that made her want to squirm. "Wade says you were in a shooting in town." "Yes, sir, but I was not involved in the fight. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time." "Seems to be a lot of that going around," Daniel said, his eyes cutting to his brother. Wade's jaw tightened. "I went into the saloon to talk to Charlie about the horses he wanted to sell. The shooting started before I even made it to the bar. And you just happened to notice Miss Reed and pull her to safety. What was I supposed to do? Let her die?" Daniel sighed and rubbed his face. "No, of course not. I am just tired, Wade. I am not trying to pick a fight." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut, and Catherine felt acutely uncomfortable. She started to stand. "Perhaps this was a mistake. I can find somewhere else to work." "No," Margaret said firmly, putting a hand on Catherine's shoulder. "You are not going anywhere. We need the help and you need a place to stay. That is the end of it." She looked at her husband with an expression that dared him to argue. Daniel's face softened. "Margaret is right. I apologize, Miss Reed. You are welcome here. Frank, can you show Miss Reed to the spare room upstairs? It is small but clean, and it has a good bed." Frank nodded and gestured for Catherine to follow him. As she climbed the stairs with her carpetbag, she heard Margaret's voice drift up from below, sharp with frustration. "That was rude, Daniel Harrison. The poor girl has been shot at and is far from home, and you treat her like she is some kind of trouble." Catherine did not hear Daniel's response. The room Frank showed her was indeed small, barely large enough for a single bed, a dresser, and a washstand, but it was clean and the window looked out over the ranch yard toward the distant mountains. After Frank left her alone, Catherine sat on the bed and finally let herself feel the full weight of the day. Her arm ached, her head pounded, and she was in a stranger's house in the middle of nowhere with no idea if she had made the right choice. But she had a room and the promise of employment, which was more than she'd had that morning. She would simply have to prove her worth and try not to cause the Harrison family any trouble. Especially, she thought, with Wade Harrison, whose creek water eyes had looked at her with a kindness she had not experienced in a very long time. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Miss Reid," it was Margaret's voice. "May I come in?" "Of course." Margaret entered carrying a blue dress over her arm. "I thought you might want to change. That dress is ruined with the blood, and this one should fit you well enough. We are about the same size, though you might find it a bit big in certain places." She patted her pregnant belly with a wry smile. "Thank you," Catherine said, touched by the gesture. "You did not have to do that." "Of course I did. We are going to be living under the same roof. I want you to feel welcome here." Margaret sat down on the bed beside her. "I also wanted to apologize for my husband. He has been under a lot of stress lately. The cattle prices are down, we are short on hands, and he worries constantly about money. He should not have taken it out on you. It is all right, I understand." "Also," Margaret hesitated, then continued, "there is some tension between Daniel and Wade right now. It has nothing to do with you, but you walked into the middle of it today." Catherine did not know how to respond to this, so she simply nodded. Margaret gave her a tired smile. "Why don't you rest for a while? Dinner will be in a couple of hours. Tomorrow you can start helping with the cooking if your arm feels well enough, but tonight you are my guest." After Margaret left, Catherine changed into the borrowed dress and lay down on the bed, intending to rest for just a few minutes. But exhaustion pulled her under, and she did not wake until someone knocked on her door calling her to dinner. The meal was eaten in the kitchen rather than a formal dining room, with everyone seated around the large wooden table. Besides the family, Frank the foreman joined them, as did two ranch hands introduced as Tom and Pete. The food was simple but good. Beef stew with fresh bread and butter, and Catherine ate hungrily, realizing she had not had a proper meal since early that morning. Wade sat across from her, and she found her eyes drawn to him repeatedly throughout the meal. He spoke little, letting the others carry the conversation, but when he did speak, people listened. He had an easy confidence about him that was different from his brother's more rigid authority. After dinner, Margaret tried to insist that Catherine rest some more, but Catherine refused. "You have done enough for me already. Let me at least help with the dishes." They washed the dishes together while the men went outside to check on the animals one final time before bed. The two children, boys aged 4 and 2, played on the floor near their feet, building towers from wooden blocks. "How long have you been married?" Catherine asked. 8 years. Daniel and I met in Virginia City when I was working in a hotel restaurant. He was in town buying supplies and came in for dinner 3 nights in a row before he finally worked up the courage to speak to me. Margaret smiled at the memory. He was so nervous he could barely string 2 words together. I found it charming. "And you moved here to the ranch?" "Yes." His father was still alive then, and Wade was just 18. It was harder than I expected, leaving city life for ranch life, but I grew to love it. The isolation can be difficult, especially with young children, but there is something peaceful about this place too. Catherine handed her another clean plate. "Wade seems different from his brother." Margaret gave her a knowing look. "They are very different people. Daniel is the oldest and always took his responsibilities seriously. He wanted to take over the ranch and build something lasting. Wade was always the dreamer. He loves this land, but he also feels trapped by it sometimes. He wants to see what is beyond those mountains." "Then why does he stay?" "Family obligation. Loyalty. And partly because I think he is afraid that if he leaves, he will lose the only home he has ever known. Margaret paused. He also stays because Daniel needs him, even if neither of them will say it out loud. That night, lying in her small room, Catherine listened to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch at night. An owl called somewhere in the darkness, and she could hear the soft lowing of cattle in the distance. Her arm throbbed with a dull ache, and she wondered what her mother would think of her ending up here, in the middle of the Nevada wilderness, working for strangers. But then she remembered her mother's last words to her, spoken in a voice barely above a whisper. "Do not be like me, Catherine. Do not let fear keep you small. Live your life." Catherine closed her eyes and made a silent promise. She would make this work. She would prove her worth at this ranch, save her money, and build a life for herself. She would not let fear or loneliness or the past dictate her future. The next morning, Catherine woke before dawn and found her way downstairs to the kitchen. Margaret was already there, looking exhausted as she tried to prepare breakfast while the youngest child clung to her leg and cried. "Here, let me," Catherine said, gently taking the knife from Margaret's hand. "Sit down and tend to him. I can manage breakfast." Margaret looked ready to argue, then sagged with relief. "Thank you. He was up 3 times in the night with a cough, and I am about to fall over." Catherine set to work with an efficiency born of years helping her mother. She fried bacon and eggs, made biscuits from the dough she found waiting in the cool box, and brewed strong coffee. By the time the men started coming in from their early morning chores, breakfast was on the table and Margaret was dozing in her chair with her youngest son asleep in her lap. Daniel stopped in the doorway, taking in the scene. His expression softened as he looked at his wife, then shifted to surprise as he turned to Catherine. "Did you make all this?" "Yes, sir. I hope it is satisfactory." He tried the biscuits and nodded slowly. "More than satisfactory. Margaret, you found us a treasure." Over the following days, Catherine settled into the rhythm of ranch life. She woke early to prepare breakfast, spent her mornings cleaning and preparing midday dinner, and used her afternoons to bake bread, preserve food, and help Margaret with the children. Her arm healed quickly, the wound scabbing over and itching as new skin formed beneath. She saw Wade frequently but spoke to him little. He worked long hours with the cattle and horses, coming in for meals tired and dusty. But she felt his eyes on her sometimes, and once when she looked up from kneading bread, she caught him watching her from the doorway with an expression she could not read. 3 weeks after her arrival, Wade came to the kitchen late one afternoon when she was alone. Catherine was rolling out pie crust, her hands dusted with flour. "Miss Reed, I am riding into White Pine tomorrow for supplies," he said. "Margaret mentioned you might need some things. I would be happy to pick them up for you." Catherine wiped her hands on her apron. "That is kind of you, but I do not want to be a bother." "It is no bother. I am going anyway." She hesitated, then admitted, "The truth is, I do not have money to spare for extras right now. Margaret already gave me some necessities when I first arrived, and I will not receive my wages until the end of the month." Wade leaned against the doorframe. "What did you do before you came here, Miss Reed?" "I took in laundry and mending with my mother. Sometimes I worked at a restaurant like I told you." "Did you like it?" Catherine considered the question. "I liked cooking more than laundry. It felt creative, like I was making something instead of just cleaning away dirt. But mostly I did what needed to be done. That is what life required." "That sounds lonely." The observation surprised her. "I suppose it was, but my mother was there and we had each other. And now I am making a new life." She met his eyes. "I am grateful for the opportunity your family has given me, Mr. Harrison. I do not take it for granted." Wade straightened, a slight frown creasing his forehead. "You do not have to keep thanking us, Miss Reed. You earn your keep around here. Margaret says you are the best cook she has ever seen, and even Daniel admitted the other day that the ranch has not run this smoothly in months. That is kind, but I am just doing my job. Can I ask you something? Wade took a step closer. That first day in the saloon, you were not afraid. Even after you got shot, you were calm. How? Catherine thought about how to answer. I think I was afraid, but fear was not new to me. My mother was sick for 2 years before she died. Every day I was afraid she would get worse, that she would be in pain, that I would lose her. After living with that kind of fear for so long, a bullet seemed almost simple. Wade was quiet for a moment. I am sorry you had to go through that alone. We all carry something, Mr. Harrison. I am sure you have your own burdens. More than I care to count. He gave her a rueful smile. But most of them are my own making. Before she could ask what he meant, Margaret called from upstairs asking for help with the children, and the moment passed. Wade left, and Catherine returned to her pie crust, but she found herself thinking about their conversation long after. That night at dinner, Daniel announced that they would be driving a portion of the herd to market in 2 weeks. It will take most of the hands, so things will be quiet around here while we are gone. Wade, I need you to stay and manage things at the ranch. Wade's fork paused halfway to his mouth. I always help with the drive. I know, but Margaret is getting closer to her time, and I want someone here I trust in case something happens. Besides, we are taking the cattle to the stockyards in Reno, and you know how you feel about that place. Catherine noticed Wade's jaw tighten, but he just nodded. Whatever you think is best. After dinner, Catherine was bringing in laundry from the line when she saw Wade standing by one of the corrals, staring out at the darkening mountains. Something about his posture spoke of frustration, and before she could think better of it, she found herself walking over to him. Are you all right, Mr. Harrison? He turned, surprise flickering across his face. Miss Reed, yes, I am fine, just thinking. About Reno. He let out a short laugh. Margaret has been talking. Only a little. She said you feel trapped here sometimes. Wade climbed up to sit on the top rail of the corral fence, his boots hooked on the lower rail. After a moment, Catherine set down her laundry basket and climbed up to sit beside him, careful of her skirts. I love this ranch, Wade said finally. I grew up here. I know every inch of this land, but sometimes I wonder what else is out there. I have never been further than Virginia City. I have never seen the ocean or a big city or any of the things I used to read about in books when I was younger. What is stopping you? Daniel needs me. After our father died, he took on the weight of everything. He worries constantly about keeping this place running, about providing for Margaret and the children. How can I leave when I know he is struggling? Catherine watched a hawk circle overhead. Can I tell you something my mother used to say? She said that we all have to live our own lives. No one can live it for us, and we cannot live it for anyone else, no matter how much we love them. That sounds wise. Maybe, but she never followed her own advice. She spent her whole life working herself to exhaustion because she felt she had to prove something to people who had already judged her. In the end, all that hard work just wore her down. Wade looked at her with those creek water eyes. Is that why you left Sacramento? To live your own life? Partly. Also because there was nothing left for me there. But I decided that if I had to start over, I would try to do it differently than my mother did. I would try to find something that made me happy, not just survive. Have you found it? Catherine considered the question honestly. I think maybe I am starting to. I like the work here. I like Margaret and the children. I like the space and the quiet. Sacramento always felt crowded and dirty. This feels clean somehow. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Catherine found herself intensely aware of Wade beside her, the warmth of his arm inches from hers, the sound of his breathing. "Miss Reid," he said finally, "can I be honest with you about something? Of course. I have not been able to stop thinking about you since that day in the saloon, the way you looked when you realized you had been shot, the way you stayed calm, the way you looked at me when I asked your name." He turned to face her. "I know I should not say these things. You work for my family. You are starting a new life and you do not need complications. But I think you should know." Catherine's heart hammered in her chest. "Mr. Harrison, I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything. I just wanted to be honest." He climbed down from the fence. "I should let you get back to your work." "Wait." Catherine slid down as well, landing beside him. "I should be honest too. I think about you as well, but I do not know how to do this. I have never had a relationship with anyone. My mother warned me about men all my life, told me they only wanted one thing and then they left. I do not know how to trust or how to love. I do not even know what love feels like." Wade reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His palm was calloused and warm. "Then let me show you." The words hung in the air between them, a promise and a question all at once. Catherine looked down at their joined hands, feeling the calluses earned from hard work, the strength and gentleness combined. "I do not want to make another mistake," she whispered. "My whole life has been one wrong turn after another. I cannot promise I will not make mistakes, but I can promise I will try my best not to hurt you." Wade squeezed her hand gently. "We can go slow. Just let me show you that whatever your mother told you about men, we are not all the same. Some of us try to do right by people we care about." Catherine met his eyes, searching for any sign of dishonesty or hidden motives. She had spent her entire life guarded, protecting herself from disappointment and pain. But standing there in the fading light with Wade's hand in hers, she made a choice. She chose to take a chance. "All right," she said. "Show me." The smile that spread across Wade's face was like sunrise, warm and full of promise. "Thank you for trusting me, Catherine." It was the first time he had used her given name, and the sound of it on his lips made something flutter in her chest. Over the next 2 weeks, Wade kept his promise. He moved slowly, finding small moments to be near her. He helped her carry water buckets from the well, claiming the heavy lifting was too much for her healing arm. He brought her wildflowers he found while checking the fence lines. He sat in the kitchen in the evenings after dinner, talking with her while she cleaned up, sharing stories about growing up on the ranch and asking about her life in Sacramento. Catherine found herself opening up in ways she never had before. She told him about her mother's fierce independence and how it had ultimately isolated them from the community. She described the small house where they had lived, always clean but never quite warm enough in winter. She admitted her fear when her mother got sick and the strange, empty feeling when she died. It was like the world suddenly got very loud, she said one evening as they sat on the porch steps watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. "My mother was so quiet in her final weeks, and I spent so much time in silence just watching her breathe. Then she was gone, and suddenly I could hear everything. The neighbors fighting, the dogs barking, the street vendors shouting. It was overwhelming." "Is it too quiet here?" Wade asked. "No. The quiet here is different. It is peaceful instead of oppressive." She leaned her head back against the post. "I like hearing the wind and the birds and the cattle. It feels alive." Wade shifted closer, his shoulder touching hers. "I am glad you came here, Catherine. So am I." She turned her head to look at him. "Even though it started with getting shot, I think it might be the best thing that ever happened to me." "Can I kiss you?" The question was soft, almost hesitant. Catherine's breath caught. She had never been kissed before. Her mother's warnings echoed in her mind, but she pushed them aside. This was her life, her choice. "Yes." Wade cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheekbone, and leaned in slowly. The kiss was soft and sweet, barely a brush of lips, but it sent warmth flooding through Catherine's entire body. When he pulled back, she felt dizzy and breathless and absolutely sure she wanted more. "That was my first kiss," she said. "I know." Wade smiled. "I am honored. How did you know?" "The way you looked at me, like you were afraid and excited all at once." Catherine laughed. "That is exactly how I felt." She paused. "How did I do?" "Perfect." Wade kissed her again, longer this time, and Catherine let herself sink into the feeling, the taste of him, the gentle pressure of his lips on hers. When they finally pulled apart, she realized Margaret was watching them from the kitchen window. Her sister-in-law caught her eye and gave her a small smile before turning away to give them privacy. The next morning, Daniel, Frank, and most of the ranch hands left for the cattle drive. The ranch felt strangely empty without them, though Margaret seemed more relaxed with her husband gone. Over breakfast, she looked between Catherine and Wade with knowing eyes. "I suppose you two have been getting close," she said. Wade glanced at Catherine. "Is that a problem?" "Not for me. I like Catherine and I trust you, Wade. I just want to make sure everyone knows what they are getting into." "Catherine, you should know that Wade has a bit of a reputation in town for being a heartbreaker. Not intentionally, but he has a way of attracting women and then disappointing them when they want more than he is ready to give." Wade's face flushed. "Margaret, that is not fair." "It is true, though. Remember Sally Thompson and Mary O'Brien. Both of them thought you were courting them seriously, and you broke things off when they started talking about marriage. That was years ago, and I was honest with both of them from the start that I was not looking for anything serious." Margaret softened. "I know. I am not saying you were cruel or dishonest. I am just saying Catherine deserves to know your history before her heart gets too involved." Catherine felt Wade tense beside her, but she reached over and touched his hand. "I appreciate you telling me, Margaret. But I would like to hear from Wade himself what his intentions are." Wade took a breath. "You are right to ask. The truth is, I was not looking for anything serious when I met you. I figured I would work the ranch until I saved enough money to travel, and then I would see what else was out there before settling down. But then you showed up, and everything changed. I have never met anyone like you, Catherine. You are strong and honest, and you do not play games. When I am with you, I do not feel trapped anymore. I feel like maybe I can build a life here that would be enough." "But what if you change your mind?" Catherine asked. "What if you wake up one day and realize you still want to leave? Then I would want you to come with me." The simple honesty of the statement took her breath away. Margaret smiled into her coffee cup, looking satisfied. "Well then," Margaret said, "I suppose we should talk about what is proper and what is not while Daniel is gone. You two are adults, but this is still Daniel's house, and I need to maintain some standards." They all laughed, breaking the tension, but Catherine felt a warmth settling into her bones. For the first time in her life, she had someone who wanted her not out of obligation or necessity, but simply because he chose her. The days while Daniel was gone passed in a blur of work and stolen moments. Wade taught Catherine to ride properly, leading her around the corral on one of the gentler horses until she felt confident enough to venture out into the nearby hills. They went for short rides in the late afternoon, racing across the open land with the wind in their faces. One evening, they rode to the top of a ridge that overlooked the entire valley. The sun was setting, turning the sky brilliant shades of gold and crimson. Wade dismounted and helped Catherine down, and they stood together looking out at the view. "This is my favorite spot on the whole ranch," Wade said. "When things get hard or confusing, I come up here to think. I can see why. It is beautiful. My father brought me here when I was 10 years old." He said this land had been in our family for 20 years, and someday it would be mine and Daniel's responsibility to protect it. He made me promise I would always take care of it. Do you resent that promise? Wade was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes. It feels like chains sometimes, tying me to a place when I want to be free. But other times, like right now, I feel grateful. This land is part of who I am. Catherine leaned against him, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Maybe you do not have to choose between staying and leaving. Maybe there is a middle ground. What do you mean? Maybe you can build a life here but also travel sometimes, see the ocean, visit cities, then come back home when you are ready. The land is not going anywhere. Wade kissed the top of her head. You make it sound simple. Nothing is simple. But maybe it does not have to be as complicated as we make it. They stayed on the ridge until the stars came out, talking about their dreams and fears. Wade admitted he was sometimes jealous of Daniel for having a wife and children and a clear purpose. Catherine confessed she was terrified of ending up alone like her mother, working until she died with nothing to show for it but exhaustion. You will not end up like that, Wade said fiercely. I will not let that happen. You cannot promise that. Yes, I can. Because I love you, Catherine Reid, and I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you are happy and safe. Catherine pulled back to look at him, searching his face in the starlight. You love me. I do. I think I have since the moment I pulled you behind that bar and you looked at me like I was some kind of hero instead of just a man trying to help. Tears pricked Catherine's eyes. No one except her mother had ever said those words to her. I do not know if I love you yet. I do not know what it feels like. That is all right, you will figure it out when you are ready. But I want to love you, I think I am close to it. When I am with you, my chest feels tight but in a good way, like there is too much feeling to fit inside my body. Is that love? Wade smiled, that sunrise smile that made her heart race. I think it might be. Catherine kissed him then, pouring all her unnamed feelings into the gesture. Wade responded with equal intensity, pulling her closer as the kiss deepened. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Catherine rested her forehead against his. Will you teach me, she whispered, how to love properly? I am afraid I will do it wrong. There is no wrong way, Catherine. You just feel it and show it however makes sense to you. My mother said love makes you weak, that it gives people power over you. Wade cupped her face in his hands. Love can hurt, that is true, but it also makes you stronger. Having someone who believes in you, who wants your happiness as much as their own, that is the strongest thing in the world. Catherine closed her eyes, letting his words sink in. She thought about her mother, who had pushed everyone away out of fear and pride. She thought about the lonely house where she had grown up, always clean but never full of laughter. She thought about the future she had imagined for herself, solitary and safe. Then she opened her eyes and looked at Wade, at his honest face and gentle hands, and made another choice. She chose to be brave. I think I do love you, she said. I am still figuring out what that means, but I know I want to be with you. I know that when you are near, the world feels less frightening. I know that when you smile at me, I feel like maybe I deserve to be happy. If that is not love, it is close enough for now. Wade kissed her again, soft and reverent. That is more than enough, Catherine. That is everything. They rode back to the ranch house in the dark, moving carefully across the familiar land. Margaret had already retired for the evening, and the house was quiet except for the soft sounds of children sleeping upstairs. Wade walked Catherine to the bottom of the stairs, both reluctant to part. Thank you for today, Catherine said. Thank you for trusting me. Wade kissed her one more time, a gentle good night. Sleep well, Catherine. She climbed the stairs to her small room, changed into her nightgown, and lay in bed reliving every moment of the evening. Her lips still tingled from his kisses, and her heart felt full in a way it never had before. She fell asleep with a smile on her face. The next morning, Catherine woke to the sound of horses in the yard. She dressed quickly and hurried downstairs to find Daniel and the other men had returned a day early. They looked exhausted and dusty, and Margaret was already bustling around the kitchen making coffee. The trail was in better shape than we expected, Daniel explained as Catherine started pulling out food to make a proper breakfast for the hungry men. We made good time and got a fair price at the stockyards. It is not as much as we hoped, but it will keep us going through winter. Wade came in from morning chores, and his eyes found Catherine immediately. The smile they shared was brief but intimate, and Catherine saw Daniel notice it. His expression grew thoughtful. After breakfast, Daniel asked Wade to join him in the barn to check on a horse that had been limping. Catherine continued with her kitchen work, but her nerves hummed with tension. She wondered what Daniel would say about her relationship with Wade, whether he would forbid it or think her unsuitable for his brother. An hour later, Wade found her in the kitchen garden picking vegetables. "Daniel wants to talk to you." Catherine's stomach dropped. "What did he say?" "He asked me if my intentions toward you were serious. I told him they were. I told him I plan to marry you if you will have me." "Marry?" Catherine's hands went still on the tomato she was holding. "Eventually, yes. When you are ready." "I know it is fast, but I do not see the point in pretending this is casual when it is not. I want to build a life with you, Catherine." Before she could respond, Daniel appeared in the garden gate. "Miss Reed, may I have a word?" Wade squeezed her hand and walked back toward the barn, leaving them alone. Daniel waited until his brother was out of earshot before speaking. "Wade told me you two have developed feelings for each other." "Yes, sir. I hope that does not cause problems." Daniel studied her for a long moment. "I will be honest with you, Miss Reed. When you first arrived, I was not sure what to think, but you have proven yourself to be a hard worker and a good influence on this household. Margaret is happier than she has been in months, and that means a great deal to me. Thank you." As for Wade, he has had his share of romances that fizzled out when things got serious. I need to know this is different. I need to know you are not going to break his heart or cause drama that will tear this family apart. Catherine met his eyes steadily. "I cannot promise I will not hurt him, sir, because I am still learning how relationships work. But I can promise I will try my best. I care about Wade deeply, and I want to build something real with him. I am not here looking for entertainment or excitement. I am looking for a home and a family, and I think maybe I have found both." Daniel's stern expression softened slightly. "Margaret said much the same thing. She thinks you are good for Wade, that you ground him in a way the other women never did. I hope so. If you and Wade want to court properly, you have my blessing. But I expect you both to behave respectfully under my roof. No inappropriate behavior in front of the children." Relief flooded through Catherine. "Of course. Thank you, Daniel." He nodded and turned to leave, then paused. "My brother has a good heart, Miss Reed. He deserves someone who sees that and values it. I think you might be that person." After he left, Catherine stood in the garden taking deep breaths. Everything was moving so fast. 3 months ago she had been in Sacramento watching her mother die, alone and afraid. Now she was in Nevada with a job she enjoyed, a family that was starting to accept her, and a man who said he wanted to marry her. The thought of marriage terrified her. Her mother had never married, had warned Catherine away from such commitments. But her mother had also died alone and bitter. Maybe, Catherine thought, there was a different path. Maybe it was possible to be strong and independent while also letting someone love you. That evening after dinner, Wade asked if she would like to take a walk. They strolled away from the house toward the corrals, where horses dozed in the fading light. Daniel gave us his blessing, Wade said. I know. He spoke to me too. Are you all right? You have been quiet since this afternoon. Catherine leaned against the fence. I am scared, she admitted. This is all happening so fast and I keep waiting for something to go wrong. Wade moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. I am scared too, but I would rather be scared and take the chance than live safely and alone. What if I am terrible at being a wife? What if I cannot give you what you need? Catherine, look at me. Wade turned her around, keeping his hands on her waist. I do not need you to be anything other than who you are. I fell in love with the woman who stayed calm when she got shot, who works hard without complaining, who sits on my sister-in-law's floor playing with children she barely knows. I fell in love with your honesty and your strength and the way you see the world. That is all I need. I never thought anyone would want me this way, Catherine whispered. My mother always said I was too serious, too guarded. She said no man would want a woman who could not smile and flirt. Your mother was wrong. You smile when you are genuinely happy, and that is worth more than 1,000 fake smiles. And you do not need to flirt when you have substance. Catherine kissed him, trying to pour all her gratitude and affection into the gesture. I want to marry you, she said when they broke apart. I do not know when or how, but yes, I want to build a life with you. Wade's answering smile could have lit up the entire valley. Are you sure? I am terrified, but I am sure. Teach me how to do this, Wade. Teach me how to be part of a partnership. Teach me how to love without losing myself. We will teach each other, Wade said. I have never done this before either. We will figure it out together. They decided to wait until winter to marry, giving Catherine time to adjust to ranch life and for them to truly get to know each other. Margaret was thrilled when they shared the news, immediately starting to plan a small ceremony at the ranch. We can have it in the main room, she said excitedly. We will push back the furniture and bring in chairs. Catherine, you can wear my wedding dress if you like. We are about the same size. That is very generous, Catherine said, touched by the offer. The months until the wedding passed quickly. Catherine continued her work as the ranch cook, but also took on more responsibilities as Margaret's pregnancy advanced. In November, Margaret gave birth to a healthy baby girl they named Rose. Catherine helped with the delivery, boiling water and holding Margaret's hand through the difficult hours, and felt a fierce protective love for the tiny infant when she finally emerged. She is beautiful, Catherine whispered, looking down at Rose's scrunched face. Thank you for being here, Margaret said tiredly. I do not know what I would have done without you. You are family now, Catherine said simply, and realized as she said it that it was true. Somewhere over the past months, the Harrisons had become her family in a way she had never experienced before. Wade took to his new niece with surprising gentleness, holding the tiny baby with careful hands and rocking her when she cried. Watching him with Rose made Catherine think about the future, about children of her own, and the thought filled her with equal parts excitement and terror. You will be a good father, she told him one evening as they sat on the porch, Rose sleeping between them in her basket. You think so? I know so. You are patient and kind. Those are the most important things. What about you? Do you want children? Catherine was quiet for a moment. I think so, but I am afraid. Of what? That I will be like my mother. She loved me, I know she did, but she was so worried all the time. Worried about money and reputation and the future. She could never just be happy. I do not want to be like that with my children. Wade took her hand. You already know that about yourself, which means you can choose differently. You can choose to find joy even when things are hard. Catherine leaned her head on his shoulder. I hope you are right. Winter came early that year, with snow falling in mid-December. They decided to hold the wedding on Christmas Day, combining the celebrations. The preparations were simple but meaningful. Catherine and Margaret spent evenings sewing a new dress from fabric Margaret had been saving, pale blue cotton that brought out the color in Catherine's eyes. Wade and Daniel built new furniture for the small cabin on the property that would become Catherine and Wade's home after the wedding. The cabin was tiny, just 2 rooms and a loft, but it sat near a creek and had a view of the mountains. Wade repaired the roof, built a new hearth, and even installed real glass windows he bought in white pine. Catherine scrubbed it clean and made curtains from flour sacks Margaret helped her dye a soft yellow. "It is perfect," Catherine said when Wade showed her the finished result. "It is more than I ever dreamed of having." "This is just the beginning," Wade promised. "Someday we will have a bigger house, maybe children running around, but this will always be our first home together." Christmas Day dawned cold and clear, with fresh snow covering everything in pristine white. Catherine woke early, nerves fluttering in her stomach. She had slept poorly, alternating between excitement and terror. She was really going to do this. She was going to marry Wade Harrison and become his wife. Margaret helped her dress, pinning up her hair and fastening the tiny buttons down the back of the blue dress. "You look beautiful," Margaret said, her eyes misty. "Wade is a lucky man." "I think I am the lucky one," Catherine said. "You are both lucky to have found each other." Margaret squeezed her hand. "I know you are nervous, but Catherine, marriage to a good man is the best thing in the world." "Yes, it is hard sometimes. Yes, you will fight and disagree and drive each other crazy. But having someone who chooses you every single day, who sees you at your worst and loves you anyway, that makes everything worth it." Catherine hugged her, careful not to wrinkle the dress. "Thank you for everything, Margaret. You and Daniel took a chance on a stranger and you gave me a home when I had nothing. You gave us just as much. This ranch is a family now, not just a business. You helped make that happen." The ceremony was small and simple. The preacher from White Pine came out despite the snow, bringing his wife along as a witness. Frank the foreman stood up with Wade, and Margaret stood with Catherine. Daniel read a passage from the Bible about love and commitment, his voice surprisingly gentle. When Wade took Catherine's hands and spoke his vows, she heard the truth in every word. "I promise to love you and honor you all the days of my life. I promise to be honest with you even when it is hard. I promise to work beside you to build a life we can both be proud of. I promise to show you every day what love can be." Catherine's voice shook as she spoke her own vows. "I promise to trust you and be open with you, even though it scares me. I promise to work hard to make our home a happy place. I promise to keep learning what love means and to give you all I have to give. I promise to be brave enough to choose happiness." When the preacher pronounced them married and Wade kissed her, Catherine felt something fundamental shift inside her. She was no longer Catherine Reid, alone in the world. She was Catherine Harrison, wife and partner and part of something bigger than herself. The celebration afterward was simple but joyful. They ate a feast Catherine and Margaret had prepared together, with roasted chicken and vegetables, and a cake Margaret had secretly baked. Wade produced a bottle of whiskey he had been saving, and even Frank, the usually serious foreman, made a toast that had everyone laughing. "To Wade and Catherine," Frank said, raising his glass. "May they have many years together and many children to drive them crazy." As evening fell, Wade and Catherine bundled up and walked through the snow to their little cabin. Wade had started a fire earlier, and the interior was warm and welcoming. Catherine stood in the middle of the main room, looking around at the home they would share. "Are you happy?" Wade asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her. "I am terrified," Catherine admitted. "But yes, I am happy. Happier than I thought possible." "Want to tell me what you are afraid of?" Catherine turned in his arms to face him. I am afraid this is too good to be true. I am afraid I will wake up and realize it was all a dream. I am afraid something will happen to take this away from me." Wade cupped her face in his hands. "I cannot promise nothing bad will ever happen. Life does not work that way. But I can promise that whatever comes, we will face it together. You are not alone anymore, Catherine." The tears she had been holding back all day finally spilled over. "I have been alone my whole life. Even when my mother was alive, I felt alone. I do not know how to not be alone." "Then let me show you," Wade said, echoing the words he had spoken months ago in the gathering darkness by the corral. "Let me show you what it means to have a partner. Let me show you that love is not a weakness or a trap. Let me show you that it is possible to be strong and independent while also being part of something bigger." He kissed her tears away, gentle and patient, and Catherine let herself sink into his warmth. Later, as they lay together in their new bed, Catherine stared up at the ceiling and marveled at how much her life had changed. 6 months ago she had been alone and desperate. Now she had a home, a family, and a man who loved her enough to give her time to learn what love meant. "Wade," she whispered into the darkness. "Yes. Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for not pushing me when I said I did not know how to love." "You do not need to thank me for that." "Yes, I do. You could have found someone easier, someone who already knew how to be in a relationship. But you chose me anyway." Wade pulled her closer, her back against his chest. "I did not choose you despite your fears, Catherine. I chose you because of who you are, fears included. You are the strongest person I have ever met. You survived losing your mother and starting over in a strange place. You stayed calm when you got shot. You opened your heart even though it terrified you. That strength is what I fell in love with." Catherine laced her fingers through his. "I love you. I know I said I did not know what love felt like, but I know now. It feels like this, like safety and excitement all mixed together, like having someone who sees all of you and does not run away." "I love you too," Wade murmured against her hair. "More than I have words for." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, and when Catherine woke in the morning to sunlight streaming through their new windows, it took her a moment to remember where she was. Then she felt Wade's warmth beside her and smiled. This was her life now. This was real. The first months of marriage were an adjustment. Catherine had lived alone or with just her mother for so long that sharing space with someone took getting used to. Wade had his own habits and quirks that sometimes frustrated her. He left his boots wherever he took them off. He snored when he slept on his back. He could not cook to save his life but kept trying anyway, creating disasters in their small kitchen. But he also did things that melted her heart. He woke early to make the fire so she would not wake to a cold house. He brought her coffee in bed on Sunday mornings. He surprised her with small gifts, a hair ribbon from town or a smooth stone he found by the creek that caught the light just right. They had their first real fight in February over something trivial that neither could remember later. Wade wanted to buy a new horse, and Catherine thought the money would be better spent on supplies for the cabin. The disagreement escalated until they were both angry and hurt, saying things they did not mean. Catherine walked out, slamming the door behind her, and trudged through the snow to the main house. Margaret took one look at her face and sat her down at the kitchen table with hot tea. "What happened?" "We had a fight, a stupid fight about money and priorities, and I do not even know what anymore." Catherine put her head in her hands. "Maybe my mother was right. Maybe I am not cut out for this. Catherine, every couple fights. Daniel and I had a terrible fight during our first year of marriage over whether to buy more cattle or build a new barn. We did not speak to each other for 2 whole days. What did you do?" "Eventually, one of us had to be the bigger person and apologize. I do not even remember who went first. The point is, fights happen. What matters is how you handle them afterward. Catherine went back to the cabin that evening to find Wade sitting by the fire, looking miserable. He stood as soon as she entered. "I am sorry," they both said at the same time. Wade reached for her hands. "I should not have dismissed your concerns about money. You are right that we need to be practical. And I should not have said you were being childish for wanting the horse. It is your money too, and you should have a say in how we spend it." They talked it through properly this time, listening to each other and finding a compromise. In the end, they decided to wait on the horse but start saving specifically for it. The fight had been unpleasant, but working through it together made Catherine feel more secure, not less. They could disagree and still love each other. They could hurt each other and still choose to work things out. Spring came slowly to Nevada, the snow melting away to reveal new grass and wildflowers. Catherine spent her days working between their cabin and the main house, still helping Margaret with cooking and childcare while also making their own home more comfortable. She planted a small garden behind the cabin, and Wade built her raised beds to make the work easier. One evening in April, Catherine realized her monthly bleeding was late. She waited a week before saying anything to Wade, not wanting to get his hopes up if she was wrong. But when another week passed, she could not keep the secret any longer. "Wade, I think I might be pregnant," she said one night as they lay in bed. He sat bolt upright. "Are you sure?" "No, not completely, but the signs are there." Wade pulled her into his arms, his face buried in her hair. She felt his shoulders shake and realized he was crying. "Wade, are you all right?" "I am so happy," he said, his voice thick. "I am so incredibly happy, Catherine." She held him, feeling her own tears start. "I am terrified." "I know, but we will figure it out together, just like we figure everything else out." The pregnancy was confirmed by the doctor in White Pine a few weeks later. Catherine would have the baby in late November or early December. The news made everything feel suddenly real and overwhelming. She was going to be a mother. She was going to be responsible for another human life. "What if I am terrible at it?" she asked Margaret one afternoon as they shelled peas together on the porch. "You will not be terrible. You are wonderful with my children. But even if you make mistakes, that does not make you a bad mother. We all make mistakes. My mother made so many mistakes. She was so afraid of the world that she kept us isolated from everyone. I do not want to be like that." Margaret put down her bowl and took Catherine's hands. "Listen to me. You are not your mother. You have already made different choices than she did. You opened your heart to Wade even though it scared you. You built friendships. You asked for help when you needed it. Those are not the actions of someone who will repeat their mother's mistakes." Catherine wanted to believe her, but the fear lingered. As her belly grew and the baby became more real, she found herself thinking constantly about her mother, about the lessons she had been taught and which ones to keep or discard, about what kind of mother she wanted to be. Wade was endlessly patient with her worries. He talked with her late into the night about their plans and hopes. He built a cradle from pine wood, sanding it smooth and carving their initials into the side. He read aloud from books about infant care that Margaret lent him, both of them laughing at some of the outdated advice. "It says here we should give the baby whiskey if it cries too much," Wade said one evening, looking incredulous. "We are definitely not doing that," Catherine said firmly. Summer brought long, hot days and plenty of work. The ranch thrived under Daniel's management, with good calf crops and healthy cattle. Catherine moved more slowly as her pregnancy advanced, but she still insisted on pulling her weight. Wade worried constantly that she was overdoing it, but she refused to be coddled. "I am pregnant, not broken," she told him when he tried to take over her garden work. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time while still doing everything else. I can handle it." But privately, she appreciated his concern. It felt good to have someone who cared about her well-being, who noticed when she was tired or uncomfortable. Her mother had worked until the day before she gave birth to Catherine, with no one to help or worry about her. Catherine had something different, something better. In August, Catherine turned 23. Wade surprised her with a picnic by the creek, carrying everything himself and insisting she just relax and enjoy. They ate bread and cheese and fresh tomatoes from the garden, lying in the grass watching clouds drift by overhead. "What do you think our baby will be like?" Catherine asked, one hand resting on her rounded belly. "Stubborn like you," Wade said with a grin. "Smart and strong and a little bit fierce. What if it is a boy? Will you be disappointed if we do not have a girl first? I do not care either way. As long as the baby is healthy and you come through it all right, that is all that matters to me." Catherine rolled onto her side to face him. "I never imagined my life could be like this happy, this full." "Neither did I." Wade leaned over to kiss her, careful of her belly between them. "You saved me, Catherine. I was so lost before you came. I did not even realize how lost until you showed me what having a real partner could be like. You saved me too. I thought I would spend my whole life alone, working and surviving but never really living. You showed me it could be different." They stayed by the creek until the sun began to set, reluctant to return to the world and its responsibilities. These stolen moments of peace felt precious, something to hold on to during the harder times ahead. As fall approached and Catherine's due date drew nearer, Wade became increasingly anxious. He checked on her constantly, worried about every twinge and discomfort. Catherine found it endearing and exasperating in equal measure. "Wade, I am fine," she said for the 100th time when he asked if she needed anything. "The baby is not coming today. Stop hovering." "I cannot help it. What if something goes wrong? What if I cannot get the doctor in time?" Catherine took his face in her hands. "Listen to me. Women have been having babies for thousands of years, most of them without doctors. Margaret will be here to help. Everything will be fine." But late one night in early December, Catherine woke to cramping pains low in her belly. She lay still for a moment, timing them before gently shaking Wade awake. "It is time," she said simply. Wade shot out of bed like he had been launched, stumbling in the darkness. "I will get Margaret and the doctor. Should I boil water? I should boil water." Despite her fear, Catherine laughed. "Wade, calm down. The pains just started. We have hours yet. Just go get Margaret for now. We can decide about the doctor later." Margaret arrived quickly, calm and competent despite having been pulled from sleep. She examined Catherine and declared she was indeed in early labor. "First babies usually take a while. Try to rest between pains. Wade, keep the fire going and heat water. We will need clean cloths and towels." The hours that followed blurred together. The pains grew stronger and closer together as morning light began to seep through the windows. Catherine walked when she could, rested when she needed to, and tried to remember everything Margaret had told her about what to expect. Wade stayed by her side the entire time, letting her squeeze his hand during contractions, bringing her water when she was thirsty, wiping sweat from her forehead. He looked terrified but tried to hide it for her sake. "You are doing so well," he murmured during a particularly bad contraction. "You are so strong, Catherine. I am in awe of you." By afternoon, the pains were intense and constant. Catherine felt like she was being torn apart, and she understood now why some women feared childbirth. This was harder than anything she had ever experienced. "I cannot do this," she gasped between contractions. "It hurts too much." "Yes, you can," Margaret said firmly. "You are almost there. The baby is coming, Catherine. Just a little bit longer." Wade held her from behind, supporting her weight as she bore down with each contraction. Catherine screamed, beyond caring who heard, focused only on the overwhelming need to push. And then, as the afternoon sun slanted through the windows, there was a different kind of pressure and release, and a thin wail filled the cabin. Catherine collapsed back against Wade, sobbing with relief and exhaustion. "It is a boy," Margaret announced, her face glowing as she wrapped the baby in a clean cloth. "A beautiful, healthy boy." She placed the baby on Catherine's chest, and Catherine looked down at the tiny scrunched face, the impossibly small fingers already grasping at air. A fierce wave of love crashed over her, so intense it took her breath away. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "I am your mother." Wade peered over her shoulder, tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect. Catherine, he is absolutely perfect." They named him Thomas Wade Harrison, after Wade's father. Tom was small but healthy, with a lusty cry and a strong grip. Catherine had never felt anything like the love she had for this tiny creature, this piece of her and Wade made real. The first weeks with Tom were exhausting and overwhelming. He woke every few hours to nurse, and Catherine felt like she never slept. Her body ached from the birth, and everything about caring for an infant was harder than she had imagined. But Wade was there through all of it, changing diapers, walking with Tom when he cried, bringing Catherine food and water and reminding her to rest. "I could not do this without you," she told him one night as they both sat awake, Tom nursing hungrily while Wade dozed in the chair beside the bed. "Yes, you could. You are the strongest person I know, but you do not have to do it alone. That is what I am here for." By the time spring came again, Catherine had found her rhythm as a mother. Tom was sleeping longer stretches, smiling and cooing and becoming a real little person. Catherine discovered she loved being a mother more than she had expected, though it was also harder than she had imagined. The constant worry, the exhaustion, the way her heart walked around outside her body now in the form of this tiny human. But she also found joy in ways she never had before. The first time Tom smiled at her, she cried. The first time he laughed, a burbling giggle that seemed to come from his toes, she felt her heart might burst. Watching Wade with their son, the gentleness and patience and obvious love made her fall even more deeply in love with her husband. "You were right," she told Wade one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Tom asleep between them. "You showed me what love could be. Not just romantic love, but all kinds of love, family love, the love of having a real home, the love of watching your child grow." Wade pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "We showed each other. I did not know what I was missing until you came into my life." The years that followed were full and rich. They had 2 more children, a daughter named Sarah and another boy they called James. The cabin grew crowded, and they talked about building a bigger house, but somehow they never got around to it. The small space felt cozy rather than cramped, full of love and laughter and the beautiful chaos of family life. Daniel and Margaret's ranch continued to prosper, and eventually Daniel made Wade a full partner. The 2 brothers worked side by side, their relationship stronger than it had been in years. Margaret and Catherine became true sisters, raising their children together and supporting each other through the challenges of ranch life. Catherine never forgot her mother or the lonely years before she came to Nevada, but she made sure her own children grew up differently. They knew they were loved. They knew they belonged. They grew up with cousins and friends, with community and connection. She made sure they understood that strength could coexist with love, that independence did not mean isolation. On their 10th anniversary, Wade surprised Catherine with a trip to San Francisco. They left the children with Margaret and Daniel and took the train west, Catherine's first time traveling since she had arrived in White Pine all those years ago. Standing on a hill overlooking the ocean, Watching waves crash against the shore, Catherine felt Wade slip his arm around her waist. "Do you remember when you told me you did not know how to love?" he asked. "I remember. Look at what you built. 3 children who adore you. A home full of warmth, friendships, and family. You learned, Catherine. You learned how to love so well." Catherine leaned into him, breathing in the salt air. "I had a good teacher." "We taught each other," Wade said. "That is how the best partnerships work." They stood there watching the sun sink toward the horizon, and Catherine thought about the terrified young woman who had walked into that saloon in White Pine over a decade ago. That woman had been so certain she was broken, unable to love or be loved. She had carried her mother's fears and warnings like weights around her neck, but she had been wrong. She had not been broken, just inexperienced. She had not been incapable of love, just scared to try. All she had needed was someone patient enough to show her that love was not a trap or a weakness, but the very thing that made life worth living. As the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Catherine made a silent promise to that long-ago version of herself. She promised that the fear and loneliness had been worth enduring because they had led her here. To this moment, this life, this love. "Thank you," she whispered to Wade. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For showing me that I was capable of more than I believed." Wade turned her to face him, his creek water eyes as warm as they had been that first day. "You showed yourself, Catherine. I just had the privilege of witnessing it." They returned to the ranch renewed, ready to face whatever came next. The years continued to unfold, bringing challenges and triumphs, sorrows and joys. Tom grew tall and strong, inheriting his father's way with horses. Sarah developed her mother's skill in the kitchen, and a fierce independence that both worried and delighted Catherine. James was the dreamer, always asking questions and wondering about the world beyond the ranch. When Tom turned 18 and announced he wanted to travel before settling down, Catherine felt her mother's old fears rise up. But she pushed them down and gave her blessing. She would not hold her children back out of fear. She would not repeat her mother's mistakes. "See the world," she told Tom the day he left. "Then come home and tell us all about it." He did come back, 2 years later, with stories of San Francisco and Denver and even New York City. He had seen the ocean and ridden trains and worked a dozen different jobs. But he returned to the ranch because, he said, that was where his heart was. Sarah married a rancher from the next county over, someone she met at a dance in White Pine. The young man reminded Catherine of Wade, steady and kind with a quiet strength. James eventually became a teacher, moving to Virginia City but visiting often. The years turned Catherine's hair gray and added lines to her face, but she wore them proudly. Each one represented a year lived fully, a year of loving and being loved. Wade's hair grayed too, and his shoulders stooped slightly, but to Catherine he was still the man who had pulled her behind a bar and asked her name through gun smoke. On their 30th anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren, Catherine stood to make a toast. Her voice was steady and strong. 30 years ago, I arrived in White Pine with nothing but a carpet bag and $3 to my name. I was alone and afraid, carrying my mother's fears and warnings like chains. I did not think I was capable of love or worthy of being loved. She looked at Wade, who sat beside her with tears in his eyes. Then a cowboy with creek water eyes saved my life and asked if I could cook. He brought me to this ranch and to this family. And when I told him I did not know how to love, he said 5 words that changed everything. He said, "Then let me show you." Catherine raised her glass, her hand steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. He kept that promise every single day for 30 years. He showed me that love was not a trap but a gift. He showed me that being strong did not mean being alone. He showed me that opening your heart, even when it terrifies you, is the bravest thing you can do. Wade Harrison, you gave me everything. You gave me a home and a family and a life beyond anything I imagined possible. You gave me yourself, and that was always more than enough. Wade stood and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight as their family applauded and cheered. Catherine closed her eyes and breathed him in, this man who had taught her how to love, who had been patient with her fears and celebrated her strengths. "I love you," she whispered against his chest. "I love you so much it still scares me sometimes." "Good," Wade said, pulling back to look at her. "Real love should be a little scary. It means it matters. It means we are invested completely. No regrets, not a single one." Catherine thought about the life she had built, so different from the one her mother had lived. She thought about the lonely years before Wade, the fear and isolation. She thought about taking the chance to trust him, to open her heart despite all her mother's warnings. "No regrets," she said firmly. "Not one." They danced that night, slowly circling the floor while their family watched. Catherine's knees ached and Wade's back was stiff, but they held each other close and moved together like they had for 3 decades. The next morning, Catherine woke in their bed in the house they had finally built 10 years earlier. The sun streamed through lace curtains, and she could hear Wade already moving around downstairs. She lay there for a moment, cataloging her blessings: 3 healthy children grown and building their own lives. 6 grandchildren so far, with more surely to come. A home that was truly hers. A family bound by love rather than obligation. And Wade, always Wade, still choosing her every single day. She thought about the bullet that had grazed her shoulder in a dusty saloon all those years ago. It had hurt and left a scar, but it had also been the catalyst for everything that came after. Sometimes, she thought, the things that hurt us also set us on the path to healing. Catherine rose and dressed, going downstairs to find Wade making coffee. He looked up and smiled when he heard her, that sunrise smile that still made her heart race after all these years. "Good morning, Mrs. Harrison." "Good morning, Mr. Harrison." He poured her coffee and they sat together at the kitchen table, watching the sun climb higher. They did not need to fill the silence with words. After 30 years, they knew each other too well for that. The silence was comfortable, full of shared history and ongoing devotion. "What are you thinking about?" Wade finally asked. "How different my life is from what I expected. How grateful I am that I walked into that saloon on that particular day. Best worst day of your life." Something like that. Catherine reached across the table to take his hand. "You kept your promise, Wade. You showed me how to love, and in doing so you gave me everything that matters." Wade squeezed her hand, his calloused thumb rubbing across her knuckles. "We have a good life, Catherine." "The best life," she agreed. "I would not change a single thing." And it was true. The scared young woman who had not known how to love had learned. She had opened her heart despite her fears, taken a chance on a cowboy with kind eyes and built something beautiful. She had learned that love was not a weakness, but the source of all her strength. That being vulnerable was not the same as being broken. That asking for help was not admitting defeat. Most importantly, she had learned that her mother's life did not have to be her own. She could make different choices, create different outcomes. She could be strong and independent while also being loved. She could be part of something bigger than herself without losing who she was. The sun continued its climb across the Nevada sky, warming the land Wade's family had worked for generations. Somewhere, cattle lowed and horses whinnied. Grandchildren would soon arrive, filling the house with noise and laughter. There would be meals to prepare and work to be done, the endless cycle of ranch life continuing as it had for decades. But for this moment, Catherine sat with her husband in their kitchen, drinking coffee and holding hands, grateful beyond measure for the life they had built together. She had said she did not know how to love, and he had promised to show her. He had kept that promise every single day, and in doing so had given her the greatest gift of all, the chance to live fully, love deeply, and build a life that was truly her own. Outside, the wind rustled through the sagebrush and carried the scent of wildflowers blooming in the high country. It was a new day on the Harrison ranch, full of promise and possibility, just like every day had been since a frightened young woman had taken a chance on love and found everything she never knew she needed. Catherine smiled at Wade across the table, and he smiled back, and in that simple exchange was everything that mattered. Love, freely given and gratefully received. Partnership, tested by time and strengthened by commitment. Home, not a place but a feeling, built brick by brick through shared days and quiet moments. The story that began with a bullet and a rescue in a dusty saloon had become a lifetime of choosing each other, again and again, through all the years that followed. And Catherine Reed Harrison, who had once believed herself incapable of love, had learned the most important lesson of all, that love was not something you knew instinctively, but something you learned, day by day, with someone patient enough to teach you and brave enough to learn alongside you. She had said she did not know how to love. He had said, "Then let me show you." And together, they had spent a lifetime proving that sometimes the greatest love stories begin with someone brave enough to admit their fear and someone kind enough to help them overcome it.